All right, guys, my name is Lance Decker. I'm the broker and owner of Lux Team Real Estate Brokerage in Oceanside. A little bit about me. I did 10 years in the Marine Corps. I joined in 2010. Did time in CI Human. I don't know if you guys know counterintel, human intel. Loved it. A little much for me. I got out, started my business. I took this very similar class when I was a Lance Corporal when I was 20 years old, and it changed the trajectory of my career. It changed the trajectory of my Marine Corps experience too. After I took the class at 20 years old, I bought my first investment property. I actually got licensed while I was a Lance Corporal, and I had 2 jobs, active duty by day and then real estate agent by night. And then after my 10-year career, I ended up obviously pursuing this full time. So I hope this has a similar impact on you guys. The class says understanding VA home loans. This is more about investing though in general. Real estate is, you guys have the VA benefit. Hopefully I can teach you guys some tricks, maybe plant a seed to encourage you guys to diversify your portfolios. I know you guys have TSP, 401ks, things like that, but this is another financial instrument that would be beneficial for you guys. You guys have a leg up on the rest of the nation, and we're going to kind of go over that today. I hope this is beneficial for you guys. I think I'm the first civilian here, I guess, giving this to the NCO Council, so happy to hear your feedback. We also have Yolanda in the back that I'll be hanging out after the class if you guys want to sign up, get my contact information or talk about your financial situation. Let us know. That's what we're here for. You can take the Marine out of the Corps, but you can't take the Corps out of the Marine. I still use the same Marine Corps format for my classes. It's something that I just can't wash off of me. But we only have 16 slides. We already got through one. I hope to get you guys out of here quick. So the middle 5 slides are the most important. So feel free to snooze after, but in the core 5 slides, I hope it'll be beneficial for you guys. So who we are. So past 2 years, 75 million in sales, headquartered here in Oceanside, but we are SkillBridge approved, meaning if you guys are trying to get out of the Marine Corps, you guys want to get some experience in what it is to get into the real estate industry. We are hiring SkillBridge. 4 out of our 12 agents were SkillBridge Marines who ended up pursuing real estate. We also have spouses who, spouses of active duty Marines. It's a great opportunity for, those of you who are married in here, for your spouses to get into like an industry, because I know you guys PCS everywhere and things like that. So show of hands, just really quick, has anyone used their VA home loan before? Okay, keep them up real quick. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5. So 5 out of about 100. That's very, very low. Do any of you, are you guys able to talk about your experience? Could I ask you some questions? Yeah, when did you purchase?
I purchased a home here in Escondido.
Cool. Do you regret it?
No.
Not at all. Heck yeah, man, congrats. Hey, who else? You bought a home?
Yeah, I just closed on a home last month.
Yeah.
In Camp Florida.
Okay, good for you. VA home loan?
Yep.
Yeah, good for you, but you're living out here. How'd you do that?
PCSing.
Oh, you're PCSing. Okay, great. And then one other person. Yeah, what was your experience?
I bought a duplex in South Florida.
Duplex in South Florida. Heck yeah. Hey, you guys, congrats to you guys. It's a big deal. And I'm going to talk to you guys specifically, why you should kind of jump off that investment cliff. Okay, so why rent? This is my first prompt. Everyone is paying for a mortgage. Well, actually, really quickly, how many of you guys live in the barracks? Okay, about half. And the other half, I'm assuming, are married? Or do you guys just rent out of town and you guys are just spending your own cash? Everyone probably knows a Marine who's doing that too, right? The funny thing is, when I hear that, Marines who live in the barracks, they want to get out of the barracks, they end up renting a room with other Marines. So the way I look at it is, no matter what you're paying for a mortgage, it just might not be yours. Any person who's not living in the barracks and you're living out in town, you are paying for someone's mortgage. So I look at that as, here's investment number 1. Majority of Marines, typically when they move out in town, they end up renting a room with another Marine. So let's just say hypothetically, you guys were to buy a 3-bedroom unit, maybe a townhouse or a small home. Rent in Oceanside is $1,500 a room on average. So if you're the owner of the house, you're renting out each room for $1,500, that's $3K a month. You're living very, very, very affordably, and someone else is paying for your asset. I put why rent because you guys have obviously the VA home loan, which is very beneficial in comparison to your competition. When I say competition, it's the average American out there who doesn't have a VA home loan. So people, when they think about buying homes, they go 20% down. Well, if a home in Oceanside is $1 million, 20% down, you're looking at $200,000. The average person in America who buys a house is about 45 years old. You guys have the benefit, meaning $0 down on that purchase. Now, for those of you who actually used your VA loan, did you put anything down? Nope. But was it free? Nope. Because closing costs are a factor. So I wanted to talk about that, later on in the class. But just because it's $0 down doesn't mean free. But in comparison to your competition, you're saving a vast amount of cash. So I say 45 years old, the average American is buying a house. That means, why is it so late in life? Okay, well, if it's a 30-year mortgage, they're buying at 45. Their house is going to be paid off by the time they're 70 plus. That's bananas. Okay, and it's because they have to save up so much cash in order for them to get into the house. You guys have this benefit. And lastly, on this slide, what I'll talk about is your mortgage is made up of 4 things: your principal, your interest, your taxes, and insurance. Well, at the end of the year, you get a form from the bank that has your interest, taxes, and insurance. All 3 of those things are tax deductible. So you guys who have BAH, eventually when you get married or get out of the barracks, you're getting tax-free money, and then you're getting tax deductions on your asset that if you rent out a bedroom or 2, someone else is paying for. It's almost like a no-brainer. But let's get into the specifics of this. So a thing that I hear from Marines a lot is, well, I'm going to be stationed here for 3 years. What happens to this asset when I leave? We're going to tackle that in a bit. But average rent in Oceanside for a 2-bedroom is $3,000 a month. After 36 months, that's $108,000. So if you are renting a 2-bedroom, more than likely in a 3-year period, $108,000 that could have been put to your own asset, you're paying for someone else's asset. And that money only goes up because people typically, Marines specifically, usually get 3 bedrooms. They rent out 2 extra rooms, they sublet, whatever. So $3,600 a month for a 3-bedroom, that's $128,000 while you're here. So renting is a commodity. And this is a good analogy that I hope sticks in your guys' brains. A commodity like a soda. So let's say you're thirsty. I want to buy a Coke. I take my money, I exchange it for a can of Coke. I drink my Coke, and 20 minutes later, I'm still thirsty. Now I'm out of money, and I'm out of my soda. Now I don't have anything. So buying a house doesn't work like that. So you're exchanging your cash for brick and mortar, meaning I'm taking my cash and I keep my home. Every dollar that you pay for your mortgage goes to yourself. It goes to your asset that you're paying for. The only thing that you're paying for is the interest, which is the cost that it takes for you to buy your loan. Does anyone pay less than $3,000 a month living out in town? Just curious. 2 people. That's wild. Like 4. Okay, so here's a real life example. So now we're going to get into a little bit of the complexities, the data. So anyone in here who's loosely even considering purchasing a house, I do not recommend buying a property and then selling it when you PCS. So the average American holds on to their asset for 7 years. Now, why 7 years? Okay. So I don't know if you guys can see this. These are pretty tiny screens, but year 1, you see a negative $20,000. Now, this is an extreme example, meaning those of you who have purchased a home before, I say it's not free. That's because you have to pay for your closing costs. Now, I typically get Marines into a house with the cash to close of around $10,000 to $14,000. I threw 20 up there just in case, just to have a little bit of extra slippage in there. And we have year-by-year appreciation of the home. So a small lesson, this is Vista. This is 92081. Property values are delineated by zip code, meaning if I live in Oceanside and I have an exact the same home of a house across the street that's in Carlsbad, that Carlsbad property is worth way more than my house. So, meaning if you're shopping, you should be shopping in zip code specific, and we'll go to some extreme examples in the next slide. But here's Vista, 92081. So this is for a $525,000 mortgage, okay? Your first year, you're underwater by $20,000 because that's the cash that it took you to get into your asset, okay? Now we're gonna do a marginal increase of 5% increase of your appreciation of value every single year. Now we saw after COVID, some of these homes doubled in value. That's crazy numbers. But we're gonna go through some real life, this is a real life example right here. So, by year 2, with a 5% increase, you've broken even. Year 3, you've made $27,000 in equity. But let's say you're PCSing after 3 years. Now let's look at your cost to sell. It's about $37,000. So are you actually making money on that asset? No, you're not. But 5% increase of appreciation year after year. Let's say you hold it for 7 years. Your home value, your equity is $172,000. Cost to sell $40K. After 7 years, you've made, $120,000 or so. So let's go back to the thing where I said, well, what happens after I leave? Well, you rent it out. And I recommend that you rent it out to Marines. It's the same business model that I've used myself. Every duty station, I purchased a home. I purchased my first home at 20. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I had 6 homes. That's, a home every 2 years. Every single one of those homes that I had, I rented it out to Marines, specifically because if they didn't pay rent, I'm calling their command and I got rent. So this is one of the only financial instruments that someone else will pay for your asset. So this is the business plan. You take small amount of cash, 10, 15, 20,000, whatever. You pour it into a property. You rent out some extra bedrooms to Marines, $1,500 a pop. When you leave, you rent out the whole unit, and after 7 years, you make your sweet money. So now this is a small example, meaning $525,000. The more expensive your property, the higher appreciation. Does that make sense? Okay, so now that I've kind of convinced you guys that it's a good idea, how do you do it? Just like you are to get a credit card, a boat, a car, whatever, it's the same process. The bank wants to lend you money. So they look at your money in versus your money out, and they do some calculation. It's called DTI, your debt to income ratio, and they spit out, this is how much you can afford on a house. Completely free. Now here's something to have in the back of your minds. Well, Lance, I don't want to, I want to purchase maybe in about a year or so. I'm afraid that my credit's going to get dinged. Well, we can do a soft credit pull. Now you can get a credit pull on the same inquiry as many times as you'd like without it hurting your credit. Meaning, I'm thinking about buying a house next year. Do a soft credit pull, doesn't hurt my credit. 6 months later, I want to do another credit pull on buying a house. Doesn't affect your credit. However, it does if you do, I want to get a credit card, a boat, a car, and a house. That's 4 different inquiries. That will affect your credit. So consider that going into it too. So let's say in a scenario that I convince you guys, hey, it's a good idea for you guys to invest in real estate. We get you pre-approved with the bank. They say you can afford this much. Just because they're going to lend you all that money, everyone in this room can get they'll give you $1 million probably. Just because they'll give it to you doesn't mean you should spend all that money. So let's go over some real life examples. So I hear a lot, well, Lance, we're in a market crash. The market's going to come down. Property values have gone up so much. So this is 92054, which is coastal Oceanside. You have detached units and attached units. Specifically, we're going to go to average sale price. We had an increase of detached homes 10% over the last year. I don't know how sustainable that is. So if we go back to the Vista property, they only had a 5% increase last year. In Oceanside, they had a 10% increase. But if you look down on attached, meaning your townhomes, your condos, 20+% in a year. So those people in 92054 who bought in October of last year have had now a 20+% increase in their property value. That's a ton of equity. Meaning you buy $1 million place, now it's worth $1,250,000. Crazy numbers. But look, 92057, one zip code away. So anything above an 8% loss is about it's referred to as a crash, 10% a crash. So I want to give you guys the real numbers here. 11% down in 92057. So one person who bought in coastal Oceanside had a 23% increase in property value. One person who bought in inland Oceanside had a 20% decrease in value. So which one would you rather buy in? The one that's going up or the one that's going down? Exactly. So no one has a crystal magic ball. No one can predict the market. You cannot time the market. It doesn't matter if it's stocks, crypto, whatever. But using these data points, strategically searching for that property, which is why it's very important to look by zip code. Because to me, I'm looking at an 11% decrease in a year. I'm going, might be a deal in there. So sometimes you'll hear from people, wow, man, my asset's doing so well. Heck yeah. Those are the people who bought in 92054, had a great year. And then you hear some people saying, man, my property value is underwater. That to me is a deal. I want to invest in that area. So something to think about is this. I hear a lot of fear-mongering about 2008 market crash. If you look at any 15-year period in the history of owning homes, you will have made money. If you bought in the peak of 2008 and you sold 15 years later in 2023, you made a lot of money. So my strategy is buy, hold, rent. Hey, I make money off of people selling their homes. I would advise you guys, if you're buying a property, hold it for 7+ years. Cash out, have someone else pay for your asset, make a payday. Okay, so how much is this going to cost you? So let's say you guys got pre-approved. Let's say we went through zip codes and we found an area that you actually want to invest in. How much is this actually going to cost you? Even if you don't want to buy it. Well, pre-approval is free. Submitting offers on property is free. However, I do recommend get the inspection. Did anyone who used their VA home loan not get an inspection? Of course not, because upwards of $650 is a great investment, of a property that you're not sure if you're going to buy, to make sure you should buy it or back out of the deal. I'd rather pay $650 to learn if my property that I want to get is worth it or not. And then finally, you have the appraisal. So appraisal meaning the bank's never going to finance a property that isn't worth it. If they're lending you their money, they're going to go, hey, I want an official report. It's going to cost around $700. I want to make sure that this is worth that cash. So all in all, around $1,200 to get in there. You guys, being VA, you have added benefits, meaning your deposit can go toward your VA loan or refunded to you. So for example, we want to get into a property. I'm going to say, hey, we're interested in buying this home. Let's put a $10,000 deposit down. Cool. At the end of close of escrow, I want that money back because we have VA financing, meaning $0 down. At the end, you guys get your keys, $10,000 go back to you. That does not mean free though, and we'll go over closing costs in a second. So, quick recap. You guys get pre-approved, you search for homes, you guys negotiate, you open escrow. Then you inspect the property, make sure it's actually good for you. You do a final walkthrough, you sign your loan docs just like you would a car. You guys get keys, you set up your mortgage payment. It literally is that simple. Did any of you who recently bought in the last year have anything other than this? Pretty straightforward. But let's talk about actual closing costs. So I gave you guys an example of Vista, $525,000. I showed you guys Oceanside, around $1 million. I said, I'll split the difference and give you an example off $700,000. So closing cost, something to have in the back of your mind, because you guys are VA, is going to be about 2% of the property value. That's $14K. Now let's put this in comparison to your competitors. Someone who doesn't have the VA loan, they have to put 20% down. Let's say they saved up, $300,000. They're not going to want to put all their savings into it. They're going to want to put the least amount possible, because that's a lot of money to put down on an asset. So your competitors are out there, the people who are in their 40s, 50s, buying their home for the first time, they're putting 100K down, 200K down. If you're in Carlsbad, 500K down, crazy money. You guys, 2% of the value of the property. Now let's go into a little bit of a hack. So let's say in this scenario, which is something that I do all the time with VA buyers, it's going to cost you $14,000 to get into a $700,000 home. All right? Everyone tracking so far? 14K. But you don't make your first mortgage payment for 60 days. Meaning, if you bought your house August 1st, you don't pay until October 1st. One room is $1,500 a pop. So let's say you bought a 3-bedroom townhouse, rented out 2 rooms for $1,500. It cost you $14K to get it. Your first month, you don't pay a mortgage. Your second month, you don't pay a mortgage. You've made $6,000 before your first mortgage payment. So yes, it's costing you $14,000 to get in there, but after your first mortgage payment, because you've made $6K, it's costing you about $8,000. So your competitors are out there paying $250K plus on their home. You guys are walking away your first 2 months making $6,000. So that's what I would recommend. I would recommend doing a strategy like this because most Marines typically rent out to other Marines. Then after you guys leave, you guys PCS, hold on to that. Now, can you do 2 VA loans at once? Yes. You can use your VA loan as many times as you'd like. I've had 4 VA loans out at one time. All Marines paying for my assets. And then after 2020, after COVID happened, hey, I liquidated, made pretty pennies, and then invested it into more properties. So if I could do it with, just a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps, high school education, you guys can do it too. Every year that's ticking, you guys are paying someone. And it's going to be someone, you're paying for someone else's mortgage. I highly recommend that you guys invest your money into real estate. Anyway, I hope this was beneficial for you guys. Here's my contact information. I'm going to be hanging out with Yolanda in the back. We have some business cards and a sign-in sheet if you guys want to get real estate updates in the area. And we'll hang out for 10, 15 minutes if you guys have any questions or want to set up an appointment to see if this is right for you. Anyway, that's all I got. Thank you.